In today's reading from Jeremiah, we hear beautiful sounding, faith-filled promises from God's people that they will do whatever He tells them to do. And then we also hear complete, unashamed, sinful rebellion from the same people when they don't like what He tells them to do. And in the midst of it all, we see an infinitely merciful and faithful God who is always true to His word, a God who never fails to do exactly what He says He's going to do. So the majority of Judah was carried off into exile in Babylon, just as was promised. But they left a small remnant of people behind in Judah. But then they murdered the man who Nebuchadnezzar appointed to be the governor in Judah. And so the people feared that the Babylonians were going to take revenge. So they wanted to run away to Egypt in order to seek refuge. Then in chapter 42, they go to Jeremiah asking for a word from the Lord, apparently just hoping that the Lord would bless them in what they had already decided to do. They said to Jeremiah, "Please pray that the Lord would give us wisdom to know what we ought to do. And whatever He says, even if it's unpleasant, we're going to be sure to obey." So the Lord tells them through Jeremiah that they should not go to Egypt, that they need to stay in the land of Judah and trust Him to keep them, to trust Him to protect them. But then at the beginning of chapter 43, the people say to Jeremiah, "You're lying. The Lord did not send you to tell us not to go to Egypt." So they did what they wanted to do, and they went to Egypt for safety. But disobedience is never a safe place to be. And the Lord tells them in chapter 44 that Egypt is not going to prove to be so secure for them after all. He says that Babylon's going to strike Egypt, and they're not going to be much of a refuge for anybody. And then He tells His people, "You saw what happened to the people in Jerusalem because they continued to reject my word. They continued to worship other gods. They continued to insist on doing what was right in their own eyes. So why do you think that you can do the same thing and expect everything to just be okay?" He tells them that they're going to die in Egypt, and only a few of them will survive and return to Judah. Then they say to Jeremiah, "As for the message that you have spoken to us in the name of the Lord, we are not going to listen to you." And listen to this arrogance. Instead, they said, "We will carry out every word that proceeds from our own mouths. And to make sure that it happens, that it comes true, we're going to offer sacrifices to the Queen of Heaven." Wow. Well, the Lord tells them, "Sorry, the Queen of Heaven can't help you. You're going to die in your rebellion. And the few who do remain, who get to return to the land of Judah, they will know for certain that I'm the Lord." Now, while you're shaking your head with me in amazement at the outright rebellion of God's people, make sure that you don't miss the infinitely more amazing mercy of God. Over and over, think about this, for hundreds of years, the Lord had shown Himself to be faithful to His people. And over, for hundreds of years, God's people continued to shake their fist in His face and say, "No, we will not listen to you." But God had promised that He was going to restore them as His people, that He was going to return them to the land where He would live among them as their God. So instead of destroying Judah completely, which He would have been completely justified in doing, God promises that He will preserve a few who will return to Israel and be His people. And then He made the same promise to them that He had made to the exiles in Babylon back in chapter 30. Think about this. After all of their arrogance and rebellion, He says, "My servant Jacob, don't be dismayed. I'm going to save you from afar. Don't be afraid, because I am still with you." They kept turning from Him. He kept pursuing them. They kept rejecting His word, and God kept being absolutely and perfectly faithful to His word.